So I'm back on this job again, and got a bit more work to do. I'm going to start making some patterns up to start filling this side in. I put the gazebo up this morning because it was actually raining, so it gives me somewhere to put my tools. I think it's stopped now, but it's, you know, you don't want your kit to get wet. But one thing I've got to show you before I do anything else is look what's been brought out to me this morning. Look, a fresh cream scone and a cup of tea. This is a Monday morning actually, so I mean that's a fantastic way to start a morning. So anyway, I'll get cracking on here and I'll show you a few more bits and bobs as I'm doing them. So the first job I've come to this morning is I've got to cut a set of rafters, not the ones that go in between these steels, but there's a pair of rafters go either side, sort of outside the frame, and I want to do those first because then I can ping a line all the way along here to keep them nice and straight. I'll show you this end. What I mean, if you see these two rafters on this side, that's what I've got to do, you know, up here and on that end. So this one's a bit more tricky because it's got to sit, this is the rafter here, it's got to sit notched into that steel at the top, bird's mouthed over that timber plate there, but it's got to actually cut down into the web of this steel here. So what I've done to make it easy for myself is I've actually cut a packer up on top of the steel. Now this steel is the pitch of the roof, so I've done that top and bottom, so we now know that this rafter here is in the pitch of the roof. But what I've also been able to do is now level up some lines from these steel flanges, which you can see I've done there, a plumb line, and then I can make a measurement forward the width of this flange back to the flange here, and I've put that mark, as you can see, plus 50 on there. I've also this rafter is going to sit 5mm above this steel just to allow for a little bit of shrinkage in the timber. If I put the rafter flush with the top of the steel, if this shrinks a little bit, it could end up maybe, you know, stretching the battens perhaps. I know I'm only splitting hairs, but try and get that right from the start. So I've done the same on this centre section as well. So while I've got this set up, I can put the marks on, and that should give me the pattern to cut in these smaller ones. And going further up to the top, I've done exactly the same here again. I've put this spacer in. This line here represents the top of the rafter, so I can just plumb up from these points. This is where my bird's mouth is going to be. I can just plumb up, put that line on there. I've taken that measurements, 55mm is from the face of this timber to the flange, and this is the seat cut that I'm going to put on. So fingers crossed, when I take that down and push all those measurements forward, that should give me the rafter that should fit in. So let's get on with that. So I've got the rafter down here that I put these marks on, and what I've now done is used the little measurements I took, repositioned my plumb cut. I've got a seat cut. This should fit round the flange of that steel. Again, this is a sort of template or working template, so there may have to be a bit cut off here. And then I've done the same at the top. You know, reworked my plumb line there. We've got a little seat cut here. This is in effect is the bird's mouth that sits over that timber that I put into the web, and then obviously this just cuts around the top flange of the steel. So I've made that. Let's cut it and see how we get on. Nice. Do the other end. Just get my jigsaw to clean these out. Right, I've just got to take a tiny little corner off here because that's where the bottom section of the web meets the flange. So I'll just nip that off, otherwise that'll catch. Lovely. Right, let's give that a go, see if that fits. So unfortunately what I thought might happen has happened. There's not actually enough space to get this rafter in because there's only a sort of relatively thin gap in between these two steels, and the rafter fits inside the web. Obviously it's binding on the outer flanges, so I'm quite sure what I'm going to do there. I don't really want this to go in two bits. I at least want to get a full rafter, nice straight full rafter down this side of the steel and the same on that side. So I think what I'm going to do here is probably just waste away the top part of this timber here so that it allows this to drop in, and then I'll work out how I'm going to sort of re-strengthen it later. I'm sure I could put a noggin or something in there or some steel work that'll make up for the weakness that's caused by me cutting that bit out. But yeah, one of those things, unfortunately, you make all the measurements in the world, but sometimes it just doesn't work out like you wanted. But I definitely want to keep this in one long length. I don't want to put this in two, and I could quite easily put it in two, because I've got these web packers in that I put in, so I could just fix it those. But I'd like to keep it straight if I can. Always got a plan B. Right, super. So I've cut that little bit off the top, and that's got that in now. So it's still a tiny bit long. I think what we can see here is a slight gap here. So I've just got to take. Can you even see that? Yeah. I'm leaning over. I'm just going to take this shoulder back a little bit. That should allow that to scooch a bit further in that way, and that should make that fit in there a treat. So not too bad. Right, that's in. Lovely. I've got a nice sort of working pattern now that I can take lots of other patterns, that I can take lots of other rafters from. This is quite tricky because I'm quite tight here, but this rafter now runs nicely in with the top of the roof line. It's just enough above this steel, which picks up a little bit here. So yeah, I'm happy about that. So there's only going to be two of these, one this end and one that end, and I think I might be able to cut another one in here, but I'm not that worried if I can't. So I'll cut a couple more of those, keeping this one as a pattern, and which I can then cut down to cut all these middle ones in. So onwards and upwards. I've just, out of curiosity, checked this template rafter that I've cut on the other end, and it's absolutely spot on. I do have to say, credit where credit's due. This steel frame is pretty much one of the best bits of steel work I've ever come behind. I mean, all of the steel's nice and straight. This is only structural steel. It's sometimes it can be bowed and twisted, but all of the beams are really, really straight, and it's absolutely fantastic, really. The precision that whoever's made this has gone into, they've done an absolutely fantastic job. So it's made my job just so much easier. It's actually quite a treat to come behind someone who's really obviously knows their onions when it comes to steelwork and has done a fantastic job. Beautiful. Right, let's get them in. I'm happy. All these rafters are in. They fit an absolute treat. So this one here will be fixed tight to the steel. This one's just left loose, and I'll fix that. When I come to do that. What I'll do is I'll keep the pattern that I made all these with right to the end, and then I'll probably just cut that in half and fix those to those walls when we trim around this soil vent pipe. So I'll just cut the other end. Yeah, to show you. So really happy with how they've gone in there. I had a bit more. There's a bit more width between this steel and the house on this end, so I was able to get these two rafters in without cutting that too much of that section off the top like we did the other end. So they're sort of almost fully complete. And Again, exactly the same this end. You know, they fit down in there. An absolute treat now, up into the top. And what I've also got, which is the most crucial part, if you can just see, is that this rafter now sticks, what's that, probably 6 or 7 mil above the steel. So, you know, if this does shrink down a bit, obviously any tile battens won't look like binding on this steel. So really happy now. So what I can do now, again, off my pattern that's down here, because I took those other measurements, which would be for this, sorry I'm spinning around quick, which is, you know, you remember I put the lines on that pattern for this cut here into this intermediate. So what I'll do is cut that now, and we should be able to get a common pattern off that for all of these lower level rafters, and then to spend a bit of time cutting all those and then whack them in. And what about there? So as I just mentioned, here's the pattern that I made earlier, and as I said, I marked off where that central steel was. I've taken some additional measurements now. I knew that from the outer edge of the flange it was 29mm back to the timber that's inside the web, and then there's just 19mm up to the bottom. This is the underside of the rafter, this is to the top side of the flange, and then there's about 139mm in between to the underside of the top flange. So what I should do now is just cut that, and hopefully that pattern will work. Superb, that one's cut in, a treat, and it runs now nice and flush. And just bring the camera down, see how that planes through, just avoids that steel, which is super duper. So I've got a nice sort of fresh working pattern here. I will just quickly check it in the middle here and check it at that end to make sure that it's good enough, and then I can rattle, I think, 16 of these off. So going to go into sort of, as I said, I think in one of my other videos, you go into that kind of production mode where you just kind of get your head down and just get cutting. So I've just quickly checked this ending up, you know, it fits, but I just wanted to say again, you know, this is structural steel work. It's got to be cut, it's got to be welded, all these flanges have got to be welded on, and they've all got to be, the angles have all got to be the same. And look at that, look at the fit there, and look at the fit there. Now, this steel beam here, I don't know if I can see, you might not be able to see that down there, but it's got a slight bow in. Again, you know, it's nothing to do with the steel fabricator, that's just the way it is. But what I shall do is, I know this beam's nice and straight, this beam's nice and straight. What I shall do is, when I put the centre one in, I shall probably drill the flange out each side and put some big screws up or bolts up, and that'll just pull this straight. So yeah, yet again, I know I've said it once already, but what a fantastic steel frame for a carpenter to work in. But I just thought I'd show you me cutting. This is that last rafter I'm going to cut. I'll just show you how I'm going to do it. Probably a little bit. It's probably a little bit excessive that I've got actually 4 saws out to make these cuts, when historically, years ago when I started, it would all be done with a handsaw. But these tools, as I've said many times, are absolutely fantastic. So let's start cutting that. Main cuts in, just clear that out with the jigsaw. Lovely. Now do the other end. Now what I've got here to help me is I've got a blade left and a blade right, both with fences set, so it makes it easy for me to do these 2 edge cuts that go in the steel. So I know they're only small here, I'll just drop these in with the big saw. The right spot. And then literally blade left in here, boom, and then blade right in here. Saves a lot of work, really, really cool. And then just clean those out with the jigsaw. Look at that, lovely. There you go. So, just get those up there. So yeah, as I said, you could say it's a bit excessive. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 saws there. But, you know, I didn't mean to buy 4 saws all in one. They've sort of collected them as I've gone. But they really do make it much quicker and easier, and ultimately that's what tools are for. Right, that's got all of those cut now, so now I can get on and put them in. thought. That's superb. Yeah, excellent. What's that? 5 minutes to make a big show like that, about an hour and a half to cut them all. So as I said, you can see, and maybe you can see how the end of this one's tight. The same the other end, but in the middle you can see there's just a bit of a gap there. So that's, as I said, that's still slightly bowed. So I think what I'm going to do now is put a piece of this batten that I've ripped off on top, mark it 400s to get them all in the right place, and then I'll have a look at how I'm going to secure these ends. I might screw through the web and put a fixing through the backside of the web into the end of the rafter, or I might nog in between it and screw those to these holes that the steel guy's already cut in for me. So I might solid block it actually, it'll stop those rafters from wanting to twist maybe. I don't know, have a think about that. Decisions. Right, so I've picked a centre one of these rafters and I've drilled a couple of holes. You see them there? I can't even see myself. There's a couple of holes I've drilled there which should put these bolts that I've got straight up into the end of the rafter and should just close up, just pull this steel straight and lock all that together. So let's see what happens there. Yep. I've got 2 bolts, so rather than put all the strain on one bolt pulling this in, I'll put both of them in. And then both bolts are splitting the power needed to pull it up. Let's go in. Lovely. That's it. Don't want to go too mad with this driver because it's going into steel, that could easily rip the grain out with those threads. So I think I'll just finish this off by hand. Yeah, I don't want to use the impact driver. It's very, very powerful, and because these bolts are going up against steel, and literally there's no give, so that could just rip those threads out. So what I'll do is just finish it off by hand. You can just you can feel it then. Oh yeah, I mean that's nice and tight. Yeah, so I think I haven't seen that. Has that got that? Oh yes, look at that. So what I think I might do is do that in a couple of other places, just to pull that beam straight. Fantastic. Hopefully you'll be able to see when we look down this steel beam now. I don't know if I'm going to do this on the camera. We look down this steel beam now. You can see that's made that dead straight. So really, really pleased with that. All those rafters are in, sort of locked in. As I said, I might put a few more screws in the end of a few more just to bind it together even better. And then I'll probably solid block in between there to make that nice and stiff. I don't know, it's lunchtime. I'll have a cup of tea and think about it. So as I think I mentioned earlier, the architect's drawings were a little bit sort of devoid of particular detail, and specifically I've now come to find that there was supposed to be these giant sort of single piece roof lights that were going to go in these areas here, which is why this intermediate steel beam goes on. Well, it turns out I sort of kind of pressed the architect or pressed the customer a little bit, although there wasn't any specific detail on the plan. You know, obviously there was some drawings on the plan which showed these 2 big glazed panels sort of meeting at the top and then this sort of triangular sort of capping arrangement. And I said to the customer that usually the architects draw what they've been commissioned to draw, and if they haven't been commissioned to draw super detailed drawings, you can at least ask them, you know, they could at least give you some information about what they've drawn, because usually they would have come across it before, and invariably what they do is send you a link to the system that they're referring to. But unfortunately, none of that information was forthcoming when I asked the customer here, and they basically just said, well, you know, he's just drawn it. And so unfortunately what he drew is not really doable. So we kind of have to go to a bit of a plan B here, and what the customers are going to do is just going to put in sort of Velux style windows in here. It's not ideally what they want, but I don't think they're going to lose any of the wow factor of the building, considering this lovely sort of outlook they're going to have with these bifolders behind me and this glazed gable. So I think what we're just going to do is put in 4, I think they're 980 long by 1340 wide V-Luxes in here. It's considerable saving to the customer buying these, and also they get electric opening, which means they have a rain sensor, which if they're left open in the night and it rains, they'll close, and also they can have electric blinds, and they give good ventilation as well. So I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think it's going to detract from the overall finish. So what I'm going to do now is basically just start trimming these out to the desired sizes, space them out so they look nice and even. The other thing about putting the V-Luxes in is they're a very sort of well-trodden technology / product. You know, they've been doing them for years. They've got the right U values, the right glass, and they fit in really nicely. You can clip accessories onto them. So, you know, it's not the end of the world at all. So better start thinking about that. So I've just got to fix this bit of rafter section to this wall, and it's quite tight actually. It's not super tight, but it's too big to get a normal SDS drill, and that's where this lovely little compact, I don't use it that much now, compact SDS drill comes in. Look at that, it's a fairly decent sized drill bit, and you can still get it in there. Look, really, really handy little bit of kit. It's great to have on the van for these kind of situations. My other big SDS drill wouldn't get in here.